moderator is Bridgette Ingraham-Roberts, who will be joined by panelists Diana Jacob, Dr. Teresa Madeline, and Dr. Faith Brown. Bridgette?
Hi, everyone. It's so wonderful to see all these beautiful faces. So before we begin, I want to take a moment to acknowledge the solidarity for sisterhood demonstrated by each and every one of you showing up this evening. Take a moment and scroll through your Zoom windows. There are about 95 of you all, women, men. Oh my God, I'm so excited. This is such a powerful and necessary conversation. And the fact that you took time out of your Monday evening to join us is just a testament to your commitment to improving the sisterhood. We're here to build community together. Now more than ever, we need this. So let's get started. We're here to learn more about a dynamic between women in the workplace that is often discussed in private, as it is either something too shameful to openly discuss, or we simply deny its existence for fear of betraying the sisterhood. Relational aggression or professional sabotage between women occurs more often than you think. According to one study, woman-on-woman aggression contributes up to 80%. That's 4 out of 5 bullying incidents in the workplace. And the damage caused includes ruined reputations, derailed careers, and enduring emotional pain. While the behavior occurs among both genders, it is found to be more prevalent in female relationships than in males. The goal of tonight's program is to come out from the shadows and build awareness on this issue and address it. We will define relational aggression between women, uncover the root causes, share our individual experiences and what we've learned, and strategies to manage this harmful behavior. We will administer an anonymous poll throughout the discussion to get a real-time pulse on the audience's experience, and then we'll open up for Q&A. So at this time, I'd love to have everyone enter your questions in the chat because it's at some point during this program, we will of course scroll through the chat, look at the questions so that our expert panelists can address your questions and concerns. So at this time, we want to define relational aggression and specifically how it manifests among women. Relational aggression is a type of bullying involving non-physical behaviors that harms others' social standing or self-esteem. The goal of relational aggression is to damage relationships through manipulation to social inclusion. It can be direct or indirect, conscious or unconscious. There are a variety of terms used to describe acts of relational aggression as it relates to women, including indirect aggression, covert bullying, horizontal violence, sabotage, mean girls. Many of you may have seen the movie Mean Girls, which unfortunately reinforces the behavior as acceptable amongst women, and Queen Bee syndrome. Although the terms have slight variances in meaning, all of them describe a group of behaviors that are intended to damage a woman's reputation and or block their social or career advancement. According to studies on this topic, here are examples of relational aggression: gossip and smear campaigns, including befriending you to learn your insights and then using it against you, barring access to opportunities and a wider network, helping to push someone out of a job, social and professional exclusion, ignoring or claiming ideas and contributions. They are nice to you in public, but cold in private. They like to be in control of the situations and insist on having things their way. They publicly criticize you and twist facts and situations to make themselves look innocent. They steal your work and claim it as their own and boycott your ideas, project, and social gatherings. They leave you out of important meetings and discuss items of which you are excluded in front of you. They fabricate lies and spread rumors about your work ethic, office relationships, and personal life. And here's a harsh reality. What you tell them is used against you because they are trying to get ahead or of you or have a hidden agenda. Do any of these sound familiar? After reading this list, it was painful for me to realize that I have experienced nearly all of these behaviors in varying degrees during my 20 plus year career in healthcare. I have either participated in behaviors that were not supportive of women, or I have been the recipient of unkind acts. And the research bears this out. Being a victim or a bully are both sides of the same coin and are the result of trauma and lack of safety. So now that we've defined relational aggression towards other women in the workplace, I'd like you to take a poll. Remember, it is anonymous. We will give you 1 minute to complete the poll. We're almost there. Okay, so we're just over the 1 minute mark. And so far, 86% of you have participated. Remember, it is anonymous. But what we're seeing now is that 50% of you saying that sometimes you've experienced have experienced relational aggression amongst women. 33% of you have stated that it's occurred often, followed by always at 13%, and 5% of you are unsure. You know, this, just looking at these results, I will say that it is not surprising that many of you have experienced these very painful interactions between your colleagues, between your women colleagues, and it's probably very hurtful and surprising because, you know, we all expect, you know, our female colleagues to be supportive. But thank you for sharing. Diana, Teresa, Faith, I wondered if you wanted to chime in on the results of the poll.
So I'd just like to thank you so much for this panel, Bridgette, and thank you to all the wonderful women who participated. I'd just like to leave women with one strategy, and that is that whatever strategy you're implementing, to stay or to leave, if you're going to stay in your current role or if you're going to leave your current role, just remember that everything that you feel in the moment is just that. Your feelings are in response to a thought that you're having. So if you're feeling overwhelmed at that moment, you're feeling nervous, you're feeling like you're going to have an anxiety attack or a panic attack, breathe, because that is the expression of a thought that you're having in that moment. If you could change that thought, you can change the behavior or the emotions that are attached to that in that moment to get you through to the next moment where you want to implement strategy, to stay or to go. But give yourself grace in that moment. Just know that that emotion is attached to a thought. Change the thought, you will change the emotion. Thanks again.
Wonderful. Thank you, Dr. Faith. Teresa, you're back on.
I'm back on. I'm back on. I was talking about pie and how it's not pie. So the idea, right, is that people think about as women, right? We're constantly wanting opportunities and wanting to feel that we have equitable access to all the things that we want to do and the positions that we'd like to hold and all these things, right? And so it generates this pie mentality where more for you means less for me. If it's another woman, right? There's only so much space or something like that. But the truth of it is that we can grow the pie, and that's the end game, right? That's the holy grail is actually growing the pie by cooperating together, by building really meaningful relationships, by lifting each other up. And that's what this work is all about. So it's really worth the time and effort to have hard conversations and do the internal work that makes us all really uncomfortable of like, ooh, okay, so maybe like access to the pie.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Okay. So, as I was thinking about closing, I referred to someone who I really admire, and I know a lot of you probably do as well. I was listening to a podcast with Oprah Winfrey quite recently, and what she said was, what I now know and wish I knew it earlier is that mean-spiritedness, jealousy, hatred, they all come from a sense of not feeling worthy. And so if you understand that this is at the root of why other women may have not treated you well, understand that. It's coming from a place of them not feeling worthy, right? If you are on the receiving end of this unkind behavior from other women, I would strongly encourage you to immediately seek out trusted and unbiased advisors, such as an executive coach, a therapist, or a spiritual advisor. These are individuals who can help you critically analyze your own behavior as a potential contributor to the breakdown in the relationship and can help you see the forest from the trees. It is, as I mentioned, it is often easier to find someone at work to discuss your issues about another woman. Just don't do it. It feeds into the gossiping and the maligning of someone's character, and it perpetuates a toxic environment. Remember, it begins and it ends with you. Leadership requires dedication, devotion, and discipline to turn pain into purpose. It's important to remember that while you cannot change someone else, you can change your behavior, and we will teach you how to do so in upcoming sessions. So I want to thank everyone for joining us tonight. It is 8:09 p.m. So we're going to let you go so you can resume the rest of your evening. We are so grateful that you chose to spend an hour of your Monday evening with us on a topic that many don't want to talk about or many don't want to confront. And I am just so honored and just so moved by how many of you have showed up. And I just want to thank my panelists. They're a bunch of badasses. I love these ladies. They're some of the smartest and fiercest women I know. And I'm so happy that they're a part of my sisterhood. I'm so happy that I can now turn to them, and I've done it in the past, so I shouldn't even say now, but can now turn to them and say, hey, what's the next panel discussion going to be about? And I know that I have women who are thoughtful, are introspective, are willing to look at themselves to figure out, hey, am I contributing to this behavior? Am I not? So thank you, Diana. Thank you, Dr. Faith. Thank you, Dr. Madeline. And thank you to all the wonderful folks, men and women, who joined us tonight. All right. Have a good evening, everyone. Take care. Bye.
I'm not surprised at those poll results, I have to say, but I hope that it helps others to feel validated, that they're not alone. I think I'm guessing anyway that those of you who have experienced this have sometimes wondered if it's you, or if you're alone, and it can feel very isolating. And so I hope that this is validating, and also validates your decision to come today and to talk about this. But I am confident that if we all sort of focus on growing and strategies, that we can actually change these numbers among us.
Absolutely. Diana and Faith, in the next few seconds that we have.
Yeah, I mean, I can say that I was not surprised to see 0 in the never, right? And you know, the other numbers, by the time we're done with our talk, I'm curious if people's responses will change, but it's telling that no one said never.
And Faith.
Yeah, I think it's also telling that people are unsure. That's a very interesting statistic. That has a lot to do with some things that we're going to talk about. So hopefully, like Diana, hopefully by the time this is over, you will be very sure as to whether, one, you've experienced it or not.
Okay. Wonderful. So we're going to stop sharing the results now so that we can continue with our program. Okay, so we are now going to discuss the causes of relational aggression amongst women. And I will start this segment of the program. So throughout my career, I've been fortunate to have wonderful female mentors and sponsors. However, I have encountered a fair number of women who have exhibited some, if not all, of the negative behaviors I described earlier. Each time they occurred, I was surprised and devastated. Very early in my career, I had one female executive who was also a mentor tell me that she had a vested interest in my success because we were both Black women. Alas, it was not so. It turned out that I quickly went from pet to threat. Unfortunately, woman-to-woman betrayal and sabotage can covertly exist alongside collaboration and mentorship. Let's face it, discerning who is trustworthy and how to avoid becoming a threat without shrinking yourself is tricky work. The accumulation of each incident over the years has caused me at times to not show up at work as the confident and capable woman that I know I am. Collectively, the aggression from other women has caused me to question my intelligence, my competence, and my seat at the table. So what have I learned? I've learned that I can only control how I react to each of these situations, and became very intentional in strengthening my internal resolve. So here's my toolkit. I meditate and pray to soothe my soul. I meet with a mental health provider to process my emotions. I work with an executive coach to help develop strategies to successfully navigate the work environment. I have mentors to bounce ideas off. I have sponsors to advocate on my behalf with leadership when I'm not in the room. I have a wise council of advisors and friends who have earned my trust to remind me that the sisterhood is still alive and well, and they have my back. And I work out. I have to get the poison out. Remember, the body keeps the score. Diana, do you want to share your thoughts now?
Sure. And I have to give a little shout out to my mom and my sisters and my niece and nephew who are highly distracting because hi Jakey keeps waving at me. Love you. Before I answer, I want to thank these beautiful women on the panel for prioritizing the conversation. This is not an easy conversation to talk about, and it requires an openness to listening, courage, and vulnerability. So I appreciate each and every one of you who showed up tonight on this Monday evening to engage in the conversation with us. So I'll answer the question from a macro and a micro perspective. So for me, through most of my career on the macro level, I've had deep and meaningful relationships with women at work. I feel very blessed for that. My mentor was a woman, is a woman. She really role modeled for me what it means to lift other women up. And it's something that I've always committed because of to pay forward. She was not only my mentor, but also the only female senior executive on a whole team of men for decades in the organization which she worked. Interestingly enough, my first experience in a job was in a male-dominant environment, and that was as an orthopedic PA. That's a discussion in and of itself. We can have a multi-part series on that another day. So I won't go there. But the grass isn't always greener on the other side. On a micro level, I have experienced relational aggression, which I'd argue is more prevalent in the form of microaggressions. And so when I saw that 50% of you responded sometimes, that was my answer too, by the way. That also wasn't surprising. But I do want to point out that those covert behaviors, those are often viewed as the death by 1,000 cuts, right? So we may categorize that sometimes or perhaps a little bit, but just think about that as we move through the program. Upon really unpacking this topic and going deep into the understanding of what relational aggression is and understanding the definition, I had to face the reality that I have exhibited some of these behaviors throughout my career. And that was hard. I had to admit to myself and to my wonderful colleagues that, I have, throughout times embodied this behavior. And if I'm not honest about that, then who am I to inspire others to build this community, to build this sisterhood? And that's really the goal. That's why we're here. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thanks, Diana. Teresa?
Thanks. Yeah, so I too, like Diana, I think have really enjoyed primarily very positive relationships with women at work, I have to say, on the whole. And I too have had several female mentors who meant a lot to me and taught me so much about how to lead and to do it in my way as a woman, right? Not to necessarily conform to somebody else's version of leadership. And how strong women as leaders can be. But she also, I think, in her way, gently warned me about this phenomenon. And unfortunately, I did learn eventually that she was right, as all of you probably have. And, I have experienced several different kinds of relational aggression at different points in my career that manifested in things like exclusion from publications or other academic works, since I'm in academic medicine, that I had contributed to, or undermining my work to my boss and deflecting responsibility for deliverables to hurt my reputation, or public attempts at embarrassment. Bridgette mentioned people trying to learn about you and to get close to you and then to sort of use that against you. That's happened to me also, unfortunately, as sad as that is. And so what I've learned over time is that it always hurts, and that controlling my own response to those events in the moment is really, really important to me. I am the type of person where I need time to digest my feelings before I decide how I'd like to manage something like that. When it's available, I have found that addressing the problem directly has been really empowering and productive. And that is one way that I try to hold myself accountable and have learned to do so over time for not then turning around and exhibiting the same behaviors. Being sort of avoidant or gossiping, right? But rather to address it head on. But the other very important lesson that I have learned the hard way is that same insecurity and the same power dynamics that drive those behaviors in the first place can sometimes result in more aggression if the other person isn't prepared to face the roots of their own behavior. And I now know, after having gone through that I need to be mentally prepared for that to potentially happen when I address it directly, and that I need to have a strategy ready for those moments and how I'd like to handle it.
Wonderful. Thank you, Teresa and Diana, for sharing this. We are now going to move to administering our second poll. Just a reminder that this is a safe space and your responses are anonymous. So the question now is, have you exhibited relational aggression? You'll have 1 minute to answer. Mhm. 15 more seconds. Okay, so we're at the 1 minute mark. So I see that close to 60% of you sometimes have exhibited relational aggression, followed by 18% of you as never, 16% sure, unsure, neutral, and 8% of you as often. This is, as my panelists have mentioned, this is a difficult topic, and it's something difficult to admit that you've been unkind to your colleagues. But the purpose of tonight's discussion is to learn about these behaviors and learn about strategies going forward. We do anticipate that this will be a multi-part conversation, and we look forward to engaging in a deeper level in future panel discussions. But this is a good start to bring awareness to this issue and for you to look at your own behavior to see how you impact your relationships with your colleagues at work. Diana, Teresa, Dr. Brown, anything you'd like to add?
Well, I think I'd just like to take a look at just kind of compare both statistics, particularly in the areas of unsure. What we haven't really talked about thus far is what causes these behaviors, right? Because I think once we begin to kind of look there, we can kind of figure out why some people are unsure about whether we're participating or not, or if we've been a recipient or not, or why we sometimes are kind of deer caught in the headlights. I think, Bridgette, you'd mentioned that we're kind of surprised when this happened because we walk into environments expecting other women to be kind, that the sisterhood is well, and that everything is okay. So I just like to talk about just kind of, three things or kind of guiding lights or light posts that we can kind of look to as to causes of this. As I think Diana mentioned and Teresa, this is multifaceted. This is a dynamic conversation. It runs deep, and there are a million conversations that are born out of this one. So I'll just speak on the top three causes. And one of them is we're kind of deer in headlights because of the way we're socialized, the way women are socialized, right? We're socialized to be nice. We're socialized to be cooperative, but there is never context around that, right? We just show up trusting everyone just because, when in fact, no one has earned our trust. And because we show up with that expectation, we end up being disappointed. So one, the way we're socialized. Secondly, cultural norms. There are actually cultures who encourage women to be aggressive, right? And again, without context, aggression shows up unconsciously. And when it shows up in communication, the recipient of that communication, right, can feel like, oh my, where's that coming from? When indeed the person who is the perpetrator at the time doesn't even understand that that's what they're doing, that they're actually coming across as hostile. And finally, we can find its roots in some deep-seated insecurities, jealousies, and distrust. Oftentimes, powerful women, this is a very tough thing to hear, but oftentimes powerful women exert power in the workplace because it's the only place where they've been found to have a voice. We don't have a voice anywhere else, not at home, not in our bedrooms. So here we go. And we just regurgitated over other women. And because we have not processed through the insecurity or the jealousy, or even know that we are exhibiting that, we tend to then harm other women, be it consciously or unconsciously. So again, it doesn't surprise me that some people are unsure about whether they've experienced this or not, because perhaps culturally they've been taught, this is what I do. I show up, and I'm supposed to be the worker bee, thus I don't complain. I'm not going to complain. I'm just going to go with it. When in fact, I think we're going to find out later on, there are some ways that we can deal with this. So yeah.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Faith. That was really helpful in the audience understanding what causes this behavior. And so now we're going to talk about strategies, how to help yourself, how to empower yourselves to be, powerful women in the workplace, and, create that sisterhood that we all so long for. So if you take nothing else away from this discussion, please remember this. The next time you have an issue with a woman, face it head on with her in a non-confrontational manner and try to resolve it. I have found, and the research does validate, that engagement in passive-aggressive behavior, such as malicious gossiping, forming of cliques, only perpetuates the breakdown in female relationships. So for those of you on the receiving end of this behavior, I have some recommendations. Develop a thicker skin, which is a useful skill to have throughout your career. Understand that not all women are worthy of your trust and willing to support you. Not everyone belongs in the front row of your life. Be discerning in selecting confidants, mentors, and collaborators. I've learned over the years to follow my female intuition on this. Separate personal and professional relationships. Be discreet in the information you share. Leave your personal information at home. Act with self-confidence. Bullies prefer people who appear vulnerable. Refuse to listen to or participate in gossiping, backstabbing, and other acts of sabotage. Be proactive in mentoring and supporting other women. Nurture and cherish long friendships. We often define ourselves by what others say about us, and that's how other women gain their power. Instead, empower yourselves by focusing on becoming a better version of yourself and being compassionate human beings, and set a good example for the women in your lives. Dr. Faith, do you want to share strategies? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the first thing I'd say is just kind of advancing the last topic, and that is one. I'll just offer three things, and they're all around just expectation management. The first is, don't expect women to treat you any differently than a man would. Just don't. We just have to enter the workplace, right, with our heart open, but do not give anyone your trust. We make everyone earn it. So don't expect women to treat you any differently than men in the workplace. Secondly, do not mistake comfort for friendship. Just because we're hanging out together and we're cool, that doesn't mean that we're friends. As a matter of fact, one, we don't come to work to be friends, to make friends. We come to get a job done. Secondly, should a relationship or friendship develop, please note that it will be years before that actually develops into something authentic because it hasn't been tested. You have to test these things. We have to go through some things before I know that I can trust you with my personal Pandora's box, right? So just don't confuse comfort with friendship. And finally, when you show up in your full power, owning everything that is uniquely you. Be confident in all of your interactions and in all of your engagements. And when there is a problem, just do not hesitate to host a non-contentious meeting. All meetings do not have to be hostile. As a matter of fact, show up with the mindset of reconciliation and not necessarily being right. Asking the question, how might I support you? How might I help you reach your goal? We're here to, to advance the goals of the company, and I'm here to support you. How can I do that? So I just offer those three things.
Thank you, Dr. Faith. That's fantastic. Diana?
Yeah, thank you. And I just want to acknowledge that this gift of doing this panel, as you can all hear, right, it has been a tremendous learning, us just preparing and understanding all of this work that has to be done. So I really, appreciate hearing my colleagues speak to the strategies and the root causes. There's a foundational principle in coaching that I often share with clients and strive to live by. And that is that each moment describes who you are and gives you the opportunity to choose if that's who you want to be. So this is all about looking inward. So it's so natural for us and easy to focus on other. And it's important, right, in this process to focus on other. And I say this not to minimize the external forces, right? So the other, what's happening outside of us is happening, right? But the thing you have control over is here, it's within. And it's about choice. So I'm just going to say the principle again. Each moment describes who you are and gives you the opportunity to decide who you want to be, if that's who you want to be. So you're all brilliant, intelligent human beings that are capable of finding, situational strategies that work for you, right? You have resources, you'll tap your resources. What I'm speaking about is the long game. What behaviors are on that list that we shared with you earlier that you're engaging in, right? Whether consciously or not. Make a commitment to change. Start with one, be intentional, be vocal about it. So if someone in your workplace comes to you to complain about a colleague, let them know, I'm here to listen to you, I'll coach you, I'll advise you, but I want you to know I've made a commitment to not speak about other women behind their backs. I appreciate your understanding. Practice speaking up when you see these behaviors, especially when the individual is not present, especially when they're in a position where they can't speak up because it might be risky, because there are power dynamics, right? These are small changes. They're not easy, but they're small changes you can make. Language matters. What language are you using when you refer to other women, right? Especially when it's an unfavorable situation. How often do you use the B word and all the other derogatory words that the patriarchy has created for us and against us, right? We have choices in how we portray ourselves. And these behavioral changes can be so empowering. They can be so inspiring and infectious to others when they witness them. It takes time, it takes practice, but role modeling these behaviors is what really creates the powerful shifts in our culture over time.
Thank you, Diana. Teresa.
Thanks, Bridget. Yeah, I am going to build on what Dr. Brown and what Diana have shared. For me, over time, what I have learned is that stepping into my power and showing up is about focusing on my strategy. When I'm hurt and I have hurt feelings, I find it really useful to think about, well, what do I want to happen? What actions, right, can I take that are going to get me to the destination that I want to get to? Somebody else can hurt you, right? But you can decide to take the power into your own hands and say, I deserve better than this. What am I going to do to get to better? What can I do to strategically get to that place? And then figure out what's important to you, right? So a lot of that depends on the nature of the relationship with the aggressor. And you are going to need to choose a different approach depending on who it is and the nature of your relationship. And so, for example, a direct discussion about the behavior might work really well with a peer. But on the other hand, it might not work so well with a boss. So focusing, if the power dynamics are not so much in your favor and you're not feeling like you can address it in the most direct way that you might like to, you could focus on being very consistent in verbalizing and communicating. What are the expectations you have? What are the expectations I have? Emphasizing transparency when you speak to that person. When your psychological safety is low, it's really helpful to just constantly revisit expectations and clarity so that there's really never a question of, what did you say? Or, what did I say? You're just being extremely clear and factual and trying to keep everything extremely consistent so that there's just no room for some of that passive aggressive behavior. And I think it's really important thinking about some of the things that Diana shared about being accountable to yourself. Is that it's very easy when you feel upset and when you're emotional and this has happened to you to turn around and be really passive aggressive about it, because it can feel uncomfortable to confront the behavior, what you have to say. But all that does is simply make it worse. It never makes it better. And so it's definitely worth coming up with a strategy that serves you and helps you feel like you've taken back your power in this situation.
Thank you, Dr. Madeline. So what I've heard from the three of you is look inward. It really starts with you. How do you empower yourselves? Be intentional about your strategy. Be accountable to yourself. Be accountable to your colleagues. Have women earn your trust. As Dr. Faith said, just don't walk into work with an open heart. Have these women earn the front seat in your lives, right? Develop a strategy. Develop a strategy whether, and it's also based on your power dynamic. Is it peer to peer or is it peer to a supervisor, right? Because you want to make sure that there's psychological safety. So I think these are all very helpful strategies going forward. And now we're going to open up the lines to Q&A. We'll have about 15 minutes or so. And I know Raina has been monitoring the questions that are coming up in the chat. And so she'll throw some out at us, myself, the moderator, and our panelists to answer any questions you may have or address any issues you may have that came up during this discussion.
Okay, please continue to add questions and comments, and we'll incorporate them into the questions as possible. The first question will go to Faith, Dr. Faith, who talked about psychological safety, and some of the questions and comments are about why women have difficulties being allies. Death by 1,000 cuts, someone described it as, and why the gender socialization creates such an issue with trust and competition for women. So can you talk a little bit about how you deal with the trauma of relational aggression particularly when you are in competition, perhaps with some of the women that you may be experiencing this with?
Well, thank you so much. And I hope I can do this question justice. I'm not sure that I understand the totality of this question, but I will say this, and if this is not clear, feel free to put it in the chat so that I can be clearer in my addressing this question. So why aren't we more allies, or why aren't we more supportive of one another? That question is really steeped in how we were socialized. Were we socialized to be cooperative? Were we socialized to be kind with context, right? When women who show up secure in their own skin because in their social circles, they've been loved, they've been supported, they have fallen and have figured out not only can they get up, but the sisterhood is there to help lift them up. When they've faced controversy in their lives and they have overcome, we've developed a spine. We've developed a kind of a defense mechanism for knowing that nothing is going to take us over. When you fall and you skin your knee and you get up, you then know you can get up. If I never fall and skin my knee and get up, I don't know that I can get up. I don't have that sense of empowerment around who I am. Without that, I don't know who I am or what I can do, which means that creates a psyche of scarcity. It creates a psyche of insecurity. I don't know who I am. So if I don't know who I am, I don't know how to support you. I'll never know how to support you. It's as Diana and Dr. Madeline said, it all starts with me. I have to be comfortable in my own skin. I have to confront all of my insecurities, all of my demons. And when I can show up as the best version of myself, I can then show up as the best version for you or for the community. So why aren't we allies? Because we're not taught to be. We will overlook trauma oftentimes. We will dismiss trauma. We will pretend that it didn't happen. We're told, don't talk about that. We're not going to talk about that. Just get over it. Just keep going, girl. And we never process it. If it's never processed, then that can materialize in passive aggressive behavior. We begin to avoid, right? And the way that shows up in the workplace is we change departments or we change jobs, but we take the whole of who we are into all spaces and places. So we're going to get to the next job and we're going to have that same issue come up and we're going to deal with it the exact same way because we're not processing through it. So can we form alliances? Can we be more supportive, particularly when there's only one top spot? The answer is yes, because if I am comfortable in my own skin, I know my time is going to come and I can support you right where you are. As a matter of fact, I can champion you. Right? I can champion you because there is no lack in me because I don't see any lack in you. And if I believe in you, I think that you can lead us to that place. And I'm believing that when you get there, because of my support for you, you're going to make sure that I get pulled up too, or you're going to refer me out, right? Because I've been that support to you. So we have to look inward and make sure that we're healing from the inside out so that we can stand powerful in our own skin so that when it comes to you, I can stand powerfully with you.
Excellent. Thank you, Dr. Faith.
Thank you. Very thoughtful and comprehensive response from Dr. Faith. The next question will go to Teresa, Dr. Madeline. And there's a really great question about how we can use our voice to confront these behaviors without retaliation. And you talked about how to be strategic in confronting relational aggression. Could you share a little more, please?
Sure. I saw this question too and thought, gosh, what a great question. So I think a couple things. First of all, this might feel uncomfortable, but what I have learned is that you have to give up the idea that the retaliation is the worst thing that can happen because it's not. the worst thing that can happen is it keeps happening. The behaviors keep going. And every day you have to show up and deal with the same thing. And you have to walk around holding that and wondering if it's going to happen today, and seeing all the downstream effects. And frankly, I have realized over time that that is far worse than any sort of retaliation that could happen. And so I think for me, letting go of that as my worst case scenario makes me feel really good, and it's empowering to me. So that's step one. I think step two is no one likes retaliation. So we have to be honest with ourselves that we got to have a strategy. I think that the chance of retaliation is frankly less when you tackle the behavior in a thoughtful way, directly, right? Not in a nasty way, not in a confrontational way, but in a thoughtful and direct manner. The chance that the behavior is going to continue and the chance that someone's going to retaliate is much less, because you've taken away their weapons. When you call out the behavior, again, in a safe way, using, thoughtful language for what it is, the likelihood someone's going to come back and do that again is less. Lastly, I'll say that, in the situation where that person, and I mentioned this earlier, is maybe not quite ready to hear that, and they freak out, or, their response is not what you expect. And that has happened to me. I think that, you have options. First of all, I think silence is an option. And I don't mean silence like avoidance. I mean, if somebody, if you're having a thoughtful conversation, you're saying, hey, let's come together and solve this. Here's what I'm seeing. Like, how can we get to better? And that person loses their mind. I think you just have to let them sit there with that, right? I think there's power in just sort of sitting there and, giving it its space for that person to reflect on their own behavior. So that's step one. But also, I think, moving forward, you can continue to be the person you want to show up as, right? You can reinforce what you say during that conversation by continuing to show up as the person you want to be. And if you're constantly showing up, being the better person and refusing to buy in, right, and setting a better example and doing the right things, eventually they're going to get the message, like, this isn't working. This is not the way forward. So I'm sure that there's other, strategies out there, and others may give you different advice, but those are the things that I've kind of come to learn over time in terms of the fear of retaliation.
Thank you. Really helpful strategies for moving forward. I think we can all use those day to day. Diana, a question for you, please. In your role as a coach, you talk a lot about personal growth, and I think a lot of dealing with relational aggression is unlearning some of the behaviors that we have. So someone had a great question about mentoring programs for women, and probably by women, with women, to support professional growth without competition and or passive aggressiveness or covert aggression. Any tips for dealing with that?
Yeah, so this proves the point where I said you're all brilliant humans who know what the strategies are. That I saw that question, and it's a beautiful one, because you're already thinking about the ways to tackle this issue. So a couple of thoughts on that, and there's no right answer to this or prescribed path. So mentorship is so important, right? So mentorship, I'm just going to give a little bit of the difference between coaching and mentorship. So, coaching is really about empowering the individual, that the answer lies within. So I'm not giving you advice. I'm not, telling you what to do, but rather I'm helping to evoke awareness, right? So asking the right questions to really get you to see what you're thinking and how that's driving your emotions and how that's driving your action. And so different from coaching is mentoring, and mentorship is more of the been there, done that, right? So I've been through this before. I have some effective strategies or tools that worked for me, and I'm going to share them with you, right? It's not foolproof, but it's powerful. And as Bridgette said early on, we all need sponsors, we all need coaches, we all need mentors, and we all need therapists, right? So I strongly believe that as well. So, in the workplace, one path, if there's openness to it, is to talk about establishing a formal program, is being part of that, is getting, a group together that's willing to, if you're in a position where you're able to propose, develop, get engaged with that, right? I've seen that happen many times. I've seen it happen at the grassroots level. So you don't need to be in a, high level leadership position to do something like that. So that's on the formal side. So that's one thought. And don't get discouraged along the way, because you're going to get resistance. You may not even get resistance. You may get willingness, but you may get this paralyzing, well, where do we start, right? And this is sort of lack of momentum in getting it done. But just take the small wins and build it, over time as you move along. The other is that we're all mentors. You don't need to have a formal program, right? Commit everyone on this call today. There's 50 people that are still on this call today. Everyone on this call can commit to mentoring women, girls of all ages, your children, on this topic. And everything we've talked about, we have control over that, right? So starting to teach it in every venue that you can, if you're a supervisor, with your direct reports, with your colleagues, right? Initiate the conversations. I am going to call her out, but my friend Bridgette here, my colleague, is the one that came to me one day in the workplace and said, and we were having a conversation, and said, I've committed to not talking about other people. And it was in the context of a challenging situation. So it wasn't gossip, but it was a powerful moment for me, right? Because I took a step back and said, wow, like, I want to do that. And I did. And that was the moment I said, I'm not going to talk about other people either. And when people came to me, I said that to them. It's not just doing it, but tell people you're doing it. That's mentorship. That's role modeling. And so we have, the power to do this as an N of 1, and we have the power to do this as an N of 50. Choose which way works for you, and you'll be successful, and you will really inspire other people.
Thank you, Diane.
Thank you. So do we have time for one more question that would go to you, Bridgette?
Sure.
Okay. So this is going to package quite a few things, but pivoting from Diana's comment about how you move forward, there are a few comments and questions. One person notes that she's been too traumatized, to even know how to move forward. Someone else asked about men. They're in the workplace too. How do we engage them to address relational aggression? And I think one really key question is, how do you repair these relationships?
Mm-hmm. So I can take a stab at that before we move to closing. In terms of repairing the relationships, I think a theme that has been echoed throughout this conversation has been to directly have a conversation with the person that you're having an issue with in a non-confrontational way. I think it's effective to be direct if you feel psychologically safe, but find a way to share what your experience has been in the relationship, and give room and time to listen to what that person has to say. As Dr. Madeline said earlier, if they don't receive their information in a manner that you anticipated, that's okay. Give them the time and the space to process what you're saying to them. But it's important, I have found, to have those direct conversation. Because oftentimes the way women are socialized is we're socialized not to be direct. We're socialized to be pissed off, walk away, find a friend and say, do you know what she just did to me? Do you know what she just said to me? That's not the correct approach. And I've done it, as Diana mentioned. I've done it many of times. But this is about growth This is about learning, and it all starts with you. So the takeaway, be direct, be compassionate in your directness, because what you'll find is sometimes they may not even know that they were unkind to you. It may have been a subconscious reaction to you. They may have not been aware. So when you're bringing it to the fore, they may be surprised. So you have to be prepared for them being surprised. Oh, I didn't know that that's how you interpreted my words, or that's how you interpreted my behavior. So again, be direct. Do not go to a colleague to complain about the behavior of another woman. If that is the one thing you take away, don't do it, because it perpetuates the behavior. Okay. All right, so now we're going to turn over to closing. And so while we're closing, we're going to ask the administrator to administer a poll to get your thoughts about this discussion, and to get your thoughts about what you would like to see discussed in future meetings. So we're going to open up to Diana to start the closing.
Thank you, Bridgette. I'm just so touched and grateful to all of you for showing up and engaging with us on this conversation. I just want to say that our lived experiences are what have created our filters, and that's throughout our lives, right? From the moment we're born all the way through into where we are today. And we move through the world with these filters, often unconsciously. And we become conditioned, to otherize. And the most powerful work we can do is to bring awareness to those filters, So, what were your relationships with women growing up, with your own family, in the school, in school, or outside of school, and really delving into an awareness and a consciousness of where this comes from, and how you view the world, how you view other women. So, I want to leave you with 3 questions to ask yourself. The first is, how do I view other women in my life and the workplace? And be honest with yourself. The second is, what kind of relationship do I want with women? And the third is, what can I change? What am I willing to change to achieve that outcome? Thank you so much for joining us tonight.